You open your banking app. The savings account balance is a little higher than last month. Interest doing its quiet work in the background. It feels good, it feels responsible, it feels safe. And that feeling, that's the problem. Because a number going up on a screen and money actually growing are not the same thing. One is a fact, the other is a feeling. And for the last few years, a lot of careful, responsible people have been quietly losing ground while their balance told them they were winning. This video is educational content, not financial advice. Think of it as a way to understand what's happening to your money, not a recommendation for what to do with it. Here's what I want to show you today: why the inflation story you keep hearing on the news doesn't match what's actually happening to your money, and the mistakes sitting underneath that safe feeling. Let's start with a belief most people carry without ever examining it. If I'm not spending, I'm not losing money. That feels true. It isn't. There's a tax that never shows up on a pay stub, never gets voted on, never gets debated in an election. It doesn't take a dollar out of your account. It does something quieter. It takes value out of the dollars already sitting there. That tax is inflation, and unlike every other tax, you don't pay it by spending. You pay it by holding still. Picture two people. One keeps $10,000 sitting in cash untouched for peace of mind. The other keeps the same amount, but structures it so it at least keeps pace with rising prices. Historically, some investments have done this over long stretches, though never guaranteed and never without risk. 10 years later, the first person still sees $10,000, same number, same peace of mind, but it buys noticeably less than it did the day they put it away. The second person's number is different, could be higher, could be lower in a bad stretch, but it was at least built to fight the same quiet erosion the first person's money was losing to the whole time. Same starting point, same 10 years, very different outcome, not because one person was reckless and the other was careful, but because careful and correct turned out to be two different things. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the story in the headlines and the story in your bank account are not always telling you the same thing. You'll hear that inflation is cooling, gas got cheaper, the number on the news ticks down half a point, and it's tempting to think, okay, the problem's basically over. But here's something worth understanding about how inflation gets measured. Some of the biggest pieces of that number, housing especially, move slowly on a lag. Rents lock in for a year at a time and reset in stages. So when the headline number finally shows something easing, it's often reporting pressure that built up months earlier, not what's happening to prices right now. Note the current inflation rate and how far it sits from the Fed's target changes month to month. Worth checking the latest figure before recording, rather than quoting a specific number here. The point isn't to memorize a percentage. The point is this: a cooling headline doesn't mean your money stopped losing ground. It means the ground finished moving a while ago, and you're only just now being told about it. Waiting for the news to tell you inflation is handled. Let me introduce you to two people. Call them the saver and the builder. Not real people, illustrations, not a promise about any specific outcome for you. The saver does everything that sounds responsible. Works hard, spends carefully, keeps money in a savings account because a savings account feels like the safe, mature choice. For years, the balance only goes up. It never feels like a mistake because on the surface, it never looks like one. The builder does something that on paper looks less careful. Some of the builder's money sits in cash too, for emergencies, for peace of mind. That part never changes. But the rest gets put somewhere structured to at least try to keep pace with rising prices over time. Some years that goes down, some years it goes up more than expected. It isn't automatic, and it isn't risk-free. Nothing that grows ever is. 30 years pass. The saver checks the account and sees a bigger number than they started with. Technically true, but when they go to actually use that money, for the life they were saving it for, it buys a smaller version of that life than they imagined it would. The builder's number moved differently along the way, more up and down, less comfortable to watch some years. But when it's time to actually spend it, that money does more of what it was supposed to do. Same starting discipline, same 30 years. Very different result at the finish line, not because one of them worked harder, but because one of them was fighting a quiet erosion
Here's
the
the
whole
reframe
time and
I
didn't
want
know
you
to
to
leave with. Everything you hold as safe, cash costs you twice. It costs you once in the ordinary sense, money spent is money gone. But it costs you a second time, quietly, every year it sits still while prices keep climbing around it. Not a single transaction, a slow leak with no receipt. Most people only ever account for the first cost. They watch what they spend. They almost never watch what they're losing to stillness. I'm not going to hand you a specific number here and tell you what your money should be doing. That number depends on your situation, your timeline, and choices only you can make. And anyone who promises you an exact outcome is telling you more than they actually know. But I want you to do one thing. Pull up your own savings balance and ask yourself honestly, is this number actually growing? Or is it just not shrinking on the screen while it shrinks everywhere else? That question is the
Inflation
whole
isn't a
video.
headline.
It isn't a 5-month-old news story. It's a slow, structural pressure that's been sitting underneath your money for years, long before any single event made the news. And one day, years from now, you'll go to actually spend the money you were so careful with. That's the moment the truth shows up, not in the headlines, not in the balance, but in what it actually buys you. The people who come out ahead aren't the ones who saved the hardest. They're the ones who understood early that safe and still are not the same thing. I'll see you in